Have a new phone.
Oh,
Because,
nice. Hi, how are you? Good.
I had Apple 7.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So, I really didn't want a big one, So I got a 12 mini.
Oh, nice.
So it's about the same size, except the screen is bigger. The other screen was like 80 inches.
Oh, yeah.
So the screen is bigger, but there's some different things and I got it.
You gotta get used to it. I just got this one, I don't know, 3 months ago. And it is a little different. I have to kind of get used to the system.
Yeah. Oh, I know who I am.
I was excited to her.
Tomorrow. Talk about various things, I think. All of these projects.
Okay, thanks. Hi there.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. How are you?
It will not be.
Lady's really curly strapped.
Yeah.
I still might have to go again.
This is the best. Okay, so reference, folks. We did lift their mask.
grandkids going on? I said your grand.
Everybody.
Good afternoon.
So nice to see everyone on this glorious day in March 1st, actually. We're going to move forward and call our meeting to order. And if you were running Morgan, to quick roll call, that'd be good.
Ms. Friedman,
I'm here.
Mr. Arnold,
I'm here.
Ms. Banks, Ms. Bell, Mr. Brown, Ms. Carter, Mr. Janai,
I'm here.
Reverend Gordon,
Present.
Ms. Harding. Here. Ms. Howe.
Here.
Ms. Mendoza-Locke. Here. Mr. O'Connor.
Here.
Mr. Knowles. Oh. Ms. Rodriguez. Here. Mr. Stengel.
Here.
Mr. Tiggs. And Major White. Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be after roll call technically, but okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, thank you. And we'd like to recognize our visitors.
Paul Lewis, Recovery Council, and St. Paul Community Center Board of Trustees.
Thank you. All right. Next, we're gonna go over to Jen for our treasurer's report.
Hey everybody, I'm going to start on page 2 on the statement of revenues and expenditures. And like I usually do, I'm just kind of run through some of our largest variances for the month of January. In our federal, when you look at the revenue, we're actually at 96% of our budget overall for revenue, which is actually really good at this point in the year. The largest variance there is in federal revenue, and that is primarily due to our SOAR 2.0 Year 2 grant. We had quite a bit of back and forth with Ohio Moss on some budget revisions, back and forth with the agencies. It has all been finalized. Ohio Moss approved all of it, and payments have started to flow, but the grant actually started in October. So we're quite a bit below budget at this point in the year. It was retroactive, so the agencies were able to bill for whatever they have done October through today, and we are able to pay it. Some of them we know didn't start their programs because they were waiting for final approval. So there will be some underspending there, but some of that is going to catch up because we're now making bulk payments for the activity from October through January. In the expenditures, under the grant-funded program expenses, the largest variance in there is SOAR. So when we have the expenses to the agencies, we record the revenues. So those are going to correlate together. In the largest percentage-wise variance is in purchase of service and pass-through programs, which is consistent what I've been telling you for the last couple months. In the purchase of service, that's our treatment, and we discussed actually last month and issued 120-day notices to a lot of our agencies regarding those funds. Just the notice saying, hey, it looks like you're underspending. This is how much we are projecting you to spend at the end of the year. This is how much we would anticipate your allocation would be going forward. So we're now in that process that we'll be discussing with them what is actually reasonable going forward for that. And then in the pass-through program expenses, they are straight pass-throughs. So the agencies go directly to Ohio Moss and request the funds for the expenses that they've incurred. They could have just a delay in the timing of their request. So it may catch up because they just didn't put in the request when they normally would have when I budgeted for it. But they may also have some underspending. We won't actually know that until the end of the year. But we did put out quite a few additional payments in February. So some of that will catch up in the February financial statements. Then I'm going to go to the balance sheet on page 3, which is the next page. The biggest change here in the month of January was in cash. So we had our January grant payments, which go out bi-monthly, and January was the month for that. And that's right around 2.7 million. And that was offset by us receiving our third quarter allocations from Ohio Moss. So there was a decrease in cash of about 1.1 million, just the normal ebb and flow that we normally have in January. And then our non-designated board fund balance decreased to right around $15.2 million. The payments for January are on pages 4 and 5. There really wasn't anything unusual. Like I said, we had our January grant payments in there. And there is a motion on page 1. Might be answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for them?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Ms. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Janai,
Yes.
Reverend Gordon,
Yes.
Ms. Harding,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza-Locke,
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Knopf,
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Mr. Stengel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And next we have Tammy.
Good afternoon. I am on page 6, and this is regarding a funding opportunity that was extended to the board from the state. These are actually federal grants through the SAPT Block Grant Fund because it's been recognized that there has been an increase in alcohol use through alcohol sales, and therefore the assumption also being that there's going to be an increase in alcohol use disorders. And what the state and the feds have offered is for us to do some type of innovative programming, of course, within the confines of federal funds, so as innovative as that can be. And so we looked at our own data to see if this was something that we wanted to go after. And in doing so, we learned, of course, that the statistics locally and in the state are not great with respect to alcohol use. So we thought this would be a good opportunity. Initially, $200,000 was offered to the county board. And because other boards in the state declined, they then offered an additional $102,000 and change. So we offered this to the county for those that are Ohio Moss certified and just said, tell us briefly what you would do if you had X amount. And we have 2 applications that came in, both of which we as staff evaluated and liked, and worked with those two agencies, New Concepts and Vet Center, to fit it into what we think can be accomplished. They had allowed the funds to be retroactive, but in order to make that work, because neither program is exactly up and running at this point, we just simply did a 12-month and we were able to get it to the roughly $302,000. So the two, or I wanted to point out too, that these funds can be used because they're innovative. They have some flex to them, but again, they're federal funds, so that is somewhat relative. They can be for people who don't have insurance, have limited insurance, or need financial assistance with co-pays and deductibles. So it can be built on programs that are already funded through the board, but that the board or Medicaid can't fund, or like a part of it they can't fund, such as transportation or childcare or co-pays, things of that ilk. So the first one is that we're proposing is with New Concepts, and this is something that they used to do, which is to have AUD, which is alcohol use disorder, specific treatment groups using the matrix model, and those will be, they're looking for criminal justice system to include local courts, probation officers, but the rest are self-referred. And within this program, what they want to do is reach into various neighborhoods. They want to look within their populations that they're already serving and help with any individuals who maybe are underinsured or need assistance with childcare, as I noted, or transportation. The second program is with Vet Center, and this is something that they would like to integrate into their programming, which is this recovery readiness group. And this is for various people, regardless of their stage of change, and it will get people engaged in a way where they feel comfortable wherever they are in the process. So they have various techniques that they plan to use between both programs. They have evidence-based practices and models that they want to use. And so assuming that that is approved, we will then take that back to the state for their final approval and then issue contracts thereafter. So that's why the two motions on page 7 read pending Ohio MOS approval of budget. Because as we've experienced, particularly with these federal grants, sometimes it takes some additional conversation for that to move forward.
Can we take these together?
Yes.
We can take these together as the board opinion.
Question, just a question. Tammy, again, I think I heard what I heard, but I want to make sure that this is pretty broad brush use and application of the funds. I don't see any direct service. Obviously, I don't know alcohol treatment and maybe not necessarily direct clinician services, but educational outreach type things, and I see studies and
They can do some of that, but it is supposed to be more specific to treatment,
okay.
but not what we might call marketing, no marketing campaigns, but I believe education and outreach is allowable.
Yeah, government funding, you don't have marketing.
So what is, I mean, is outreach the same as marketing? Maybe a stupid question.
It's not a stupid question.
Okay.
It is a, we'll call it semantics.
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
Linda?
Did I hear you say they're going to, New Concepts, that they're providing childcare as part of their?
There may be some funding for childcare. So if that's an issue, that's something that is allowable within the grant.
And transportation, they'll go pick them up and bring them in?
Correct, or for appointments.
So this is childcare. So if somebody is going through treatment services and they need childcare during their treatment services, this is what it's, oh, that's fair.
Anything that would prohibit individuals from actually getting into treatment.
Yeah, I like that.
Great. So moved.
Second. There we go. Morgan.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Ms. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Janai?
Yes.
Reverend Gordon?
Yes.
Ms. Harding?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza Lot?
Yes.
Mr. Knowles?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
And Mr. Stangle?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. And next up, Bill.
Thank you. So I'd like to turn your attention to the document titled January 1, December 31st, 2021 Agency Performance Report. And we can go ahead and skip the first couple pages, so just the title there and the contents. But page 3, this kind of is just a summary about what to expect in the report. And there's two main components to this report. There's going to be your priority outcomes framework, which really serves as a macro level management guide, like what's going on in our community, just assesses the behavioral health climate. And then we also have more micro level data, which is really about agencies' performance for specific programs funded by the board. So we'll start with the priority outcomes frameworks here in the middle of page 3.
Does anybody else need one of these? I think Morgan stepped up. Anybody else?
I have an extra.
Sorry, Joe.
Oh, that's all right. Thanks, Scott.
Just want to make sure everybody's following along.
That's right.
This is
We're on
important
page
stuff.
3 and about the middle part here. So really the priority outcomes framework, like I said, is more of a macro level management guide. It was in response to our 2017-2020 strategic plan, and we developed a data and information system subcommittee that met and kind of developed the domains and the measures, which you'll see on the following page. So the priority outcomes framework has 6 domains, which you'll see in the middle here. All of our current programs and new programs must be aligned with those domains in order to be considered for funding. Each of those 6 domains consist of, they have indicators within them. So you'll see that on the next page. And those indicators, we get data from a variety of sources for those. So they could be taken from the Lucas County Community Health Assessment, agency self-report data, Ohio Department of Health, etc. So if you turn to page 4, you can see that we have, between page 4 and page 5, there's 4 of the 6 domains are listed. We don't have all 6 because there's a variety of reasons why not all 6 domains are in there. Either we can't measure it at this time, and it's something that we want to measure in the future. And also we have our 18-month strategic plan that might be an opportunity to add some of those domains and indicators back into the report here. So I'll kind of go through how the scorecard reads. So at the top, you'll see there's equitable access to behavioral health services on this image here on the page. That is the domain. Under the domain, you'll see 4 columns. The first column is indicator names. So you'll see it says mental health providers, and there's a little number 10. If you go to page 10 of the report, you'll see there's a resources page. So it will tell you where the data is coming from. So for that particular measure, it's coming from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And it tells you when we got that measure on the scorecard here. The second column is the actual. So you'll see 310 to 1. What that means is there is 310 individuals to 1 mental health provider. And then the report year was 2021. And the indicator descriptor over here really gives you a breakdown of what a mental health provider is. Another cool thing on the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, if you go on there, you can see how do we compare to Ohio, how do we compare nationally. You can also compare different counties and things of that nature. So you can see there's several other domains and indicator names or indicators under those, and I'm not going to go through them all. But one thing that was asked last year, I believe it was Mr. Stengel, is how do we see how we're performing over time? So what we do is at the half year, we're going to provide another scorecard to show which indicators are improving and which ones might be diminishing. It might help when we're making programmatic and funding decisions in the future. So we're going to go ahead and turn to page 6. And this is more of the micro level view. So as part of our funding process, which we do annually, we establish these performance metrics for programs so that we look at, how much are we going to fund these agencies and what are the performance metrics that we want to see the agencies achieve. And the performance metrics, they're taken from national outcome measures, state and local initiatives. They could be historical performance, a variety of sources there as well. Those goals or the performance metrics, they're actually in our attachment 3 section of the agency agreement that we give out to our agencies every year. So they specify the specific targets that they're supposed to meet, and on a biannual basis, we provide trustees with these reports. So you'll see at the half year how agencies are performing, and at the year end, did they meet their contracted outcomes. And most programs, unless otherwise noted, are based on a calendar year reporting basis. Essentially, we primarily use self-reported data from agencies, but anytime that we can run some of their data against our claims, or we ask for client list or formulae, or whatever it may be to make sure that those measures look as they should. Also, we have a series of internal meetings as well to go over the performance of the programs. We reach out to the agencies and talk about performance. And that's a lot of what program staff do. They get a lot of the qualitative data from these agencies, and we kind of work with the quantitative data and put everything together. So you'll see in the report in Appendix A, which we'll go through in a little bit, that agencies are either on track, did they achieve their performance metrics, not on track, or there's an NA, such as being like a benchmark year or transition year. You can turn to page 7, and there's an error on this chart. It says half-year program performance. Well, we know it's the year end, so that's going to be changed before we publish that on our site here. But you can see 77% of programs overall were on track to meeting their performance metrics. So by comparison, we can see that it was 83% in the second half of calendar year 2019. And so that was a transition year. We used to be based on a fiscal year for a lot of for all the programs, but then we transitioned to a calendar year, as it gives you a full year's worth of data to make funding decisions, come the next year. And you'll also notice that 2020 is not in the comparison up here, and that's because, our primary focus during 2020 was obviously COVID. So it threw a lot of things out the window. We asked agencies to pivot, and our primary focus, which we called our North Star, was crisis, housing stability, and access to treatment. So that was really our primary focus during that time. And again, 77% of the programs were on track. 88% of treatment programs were on track, 79% of prevention, and 61% of support. In pages 7 through 9, it just provides like a little overview of what treatment services are in relation to the board, and as well as the programs that were not on track. Are there any questions with that so far? And if you're interested in some more detail, Appendix A, which starts on page 12, will kind of give you a more in-depth overview of, if the program was not on track, what exactly was not on track. And it's all outlined on the last several pages here. And the way this reads is, so if you look at page 12 on this chart, you'll see the agencies in the left-hand column, which program that we're looking at that agency, the line of business, that's treatment, prevention, or support services, the number of people they are to serve, the number of people they did serve through that reporting period, whether or not the program was on track overall, and then there's some notes regarding that program. So some programs might say overall performance was on track, but there might be a few metrics that were not necessarily on track. And there were others that were more significant and might not, have served the number of individuals. It was significantly lower than anticipated. And as you might recall, in February, we issued some 120-day notices for some programmatic related concerns.
So are these on track to, as it relates to their overall programming and services, or on track as it relates to the outcomes framework guidelines?
So think of the priority outcomes framework as separate than the programmatic level data. So you have the macro that just kind of shows like an overview, like it might include how many deaths per 100,000 in Lucas County for unintentional overdose related deaths, where the program measures might say, how many individuals were served through SUD treatment or something of that nature.
Thank you.
I have a question. Just kind of scanning over the ones that are not on track, I noticed several of them say programs serve fewer than anticipated. Is there any more insight to that, or just?
So we've met with a lot of the programs, and we know why some of them might not be on track. They might have issues, like a program might have issues getting into a jail or something like that still due to COVID. I mean, we had one provider that they were pretty much closed door until mid-July. So they were serving individuals in a different capacity, but not necessarily coming in for programming, which can impact the number of individuals that they're serving. So we are aware of those issues, and we've met with them. You're welcome.
I can see several of these that I've dealt with before that I really think COVID had a big impact on it. I mean, it has to.
Oh, absolutely. Anything else?
So it's speaking with them, like you said, did you come up with, like, for lack of a better word, a performance improvement plan with them or anything, or have them identified, okay, what, how are they going to rectify that? And so yes, we are still in COVID, but if this is your target, what are you going to do now to try to meet it, or does it be adjusted?
Yep, we're working on that right now. So for a lot of these programs, it could be something that, we know that they're going to be able to meet this next year. So we might leave some of those alone. The more significant ones, we issued the 120-day notice for. And so we're going to work to kind of rework those programs so they make sense, because we don't want to hold an agency accountable to something that it just doesn't make sense. So we want to work together to come up with that solution. Absolutely.
Because I guess it seems as though, the need is still there. Mm-hmm. So where are these people going if they're not serving what their anticipated numbers are?
Yeah, I think it really just depends on the program. So it's some it's just hard to serve those individuals at certain places or to get people in. Like I said, sometimes just going into the jail, it's been a challenge, but I think as things start lifting up, some of that will change.
I think our biggest concern is they're not getting treatment at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you're talking about treatment specifically?
Well, I think all these are different programs, obviously. So
right.
Just in this scanning over the nose, not meeting their performance, there's several, actually more than half of them that say that they're serving less than anticipated. So I'm just concerned about who the people are, because we know the need is there. But where are these people? What's happening to these people that aren't being served if they're not coming in?
So if I may add a little bit of that, I mean, if those folks are getting treatment services outside of our network, we won't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. The intent of providing 120-day notices for programs that we believe are impacted by COVID, but also need to consider some adjustments to operate efficiently in this environment, was the reason we issued those, and so we can have those conversations. The perception is that, yeah, we're in COVID, but it's time to consider what our new operating environment is and make changes based on what we know we have encountered over the last 2 years. So that gives us the opportunity to have that discussion and mutually agree that these are some things that need to change.
Wonderful question, Jessica.
As you mentioned at the last meeting, a lot of these agencies might be understaffed. And a lot of them during COVID, everything was done virtually. And I know a lot of people who are dependent, they're less likely to get the right treatment if they're talking to somebody on the phone than what they are face to face. There are a couple of other agencies who have really been pushing. They're not any of our funded agencies, and they've really been pushing for clients. And maybe some of these agencies should do a new push to make sure that people out there are reminded what they do provide, and they've been in business for a long time and they have experience. Because sometimes you get overwhelmed with these new agencies and.
Yeah, some outreach.
Yes.
So I just have to say this because of what I do. I'm looking at NPI and it's the rental assistance and support. So I understand the treatment piece, but they're saying that, okay, they were supposed to house 130 and they only house 111, but yet I know every day, that need of people needing housing, rental assistance support. So even in COVID, that grew. So that one, I guess, in my mind, I'm struggling with, the other ones make a bit more sense to me, but in my mind, that one doesn't.
So in particular, since you brought up NPI, and we'll recognize Mr. Gunther here, hi Jim. He works for NPI, I think we all know.
Let's talk about it.
But folks, this is the transparency discussion that we need to occur. So just Jim's, I'm glad Jim's here so he can hear this, because it's not news to NPI. We issued them 120-day notice based on those findings. And while it might look at 75 or 80% of their mark, we recognize the seriousness of housing, in particular in the COVID environment. So we wanted to have the discussion with NPI on what they are going to do and what they recommend. And so that becomes a mutual discussion within the 120-day process about how can we meet those benchmarks.
Then outreach is one thing. If you send word out, what is the procedure to get somebody into this? Who do you call? What is the procedure? What are the qualifications for someone to qualify for rental housing?
So all of those conversations are had, and some of them are within control and some of them are not. And so those are the things we have to hash out over. And what is the new environment telling us? And we can't make this decision just sitting here. We have to have a conversation with NPI. We also have to have a conversation with the homelessness board about what they're seeing and what their procedures are, so that we can trust but verify what we're being told is the new operating environment.
And it's hard to do it when you're getting self-reporting biannually or whatever it is. It's not real-time data as well. Yeah.
So there's some things that, for instance, the homelessness board policy can put in place that might either increase or decrease referrals to NPI. And we need to account for that stuff. And we're using NPI as the example, but I want to be fair. We are not picking on NPI because it's just a good example of how the process works. And we have so many new trustees that we're kind of using it as a teaching experience as well, and how that whole process works itself out.
Any other questions, comments?
Last question, when I see a not applicable associated with a provider and across the board, what is that not applicable to, in what context?
So there might not be a prescribed set of performance metrics in there right now. We might, have some things that we're monitoring and looking to measure at a later time. So, and we also have our data pillar as part of our 18-month strategic plan. And one thing that you don't want to do is ask agencies to measure it this way, and then our data plan comes out and now we're asking them for something else, because it's already putting a lot of strain when you start adding a lot of new measures in. So right now we're just kind of monitoring that and seeing how our data plan goes, and kind of rework some of these things.
But overall, they will be ultimately included in the.
Ultimately, all programs will we'll have.
Otherwise, you're gonna get skewed data. All right, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you so much. This is really valuable. I think everybody will be studying it and have even more questions. And then,
Good work.
Koreans. Next, we're going over to Michael.
Thank you. I'm on page 9 of your packet to discuss first community mini grant allocation for the second cycle. As you guys may know, we have 2 cycles of mini grants each fiscal year, with the first cycle going from July 1st through December 31st, and the second cycle going from January 1st to June 30th. And that's programs that's operating in that time frame that apply for a mini grant. So this particular one is for the second cycle, which technically would start January 1st and go through June 30th. Each fiscal year, we allocate up to, in those 2 cycles, 10 mini grants are allowed up to 5,000 apiece, which is a total of 50,000. So this particular time, we do have 10 organizations that are being recommended. Each organization is asking for 5,000, as you can see in the attachment. This particular time, we had 15 organizations apply for mini grants. 1 organization was disqualified due to an incomplete packet, basically. The other 4 just didn't hit the score necessary to be in the top 10. You can see out of that 6 or 8 of the organizations are actually previous recipients to our process. 6 organizations were new organizations. I think part of that helps us because we used to do a breakfast when we could do it in person. Now we're doing it at Zoom. We're doing informational meetings so that organizations are able to sit in, get more information about the mini grant process, learn what we're looking for as we go through the actual scoring model. We let them know. They actually get to see what the scoring model is. We go through the RFP. So each organization is well informed as to what we're looking for and what we're doing. I have included a small write-up, a little more than we have in the past, of each of the recommended recipients so that you would have an idea of some of the programming, what they're looking to accomplish. I believe this time we have a pretty wide mix of organizations. They're very diverse. I think there's some pretty strong programs that we can be impressed and proud of. And there's a recommendation and a motion on page 9.
Do you have any questions?
6 are actually new to the process.
That's awesome.
Right. I think that's really great that there's a lot of new programs, innovative and especially for women and girls. That was great.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Morgan?
Mr. Arnold,
Abstain.
Ms. Banks? Yes. Ms. Bell?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Janai?
Yes.
Reverend Gordon?
Yes.
Ms. Harding?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza-La?
Yes.
Mr. Knowles?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
And Mr. Stengel?
Yes.
Thank you.
And we're gonna come right back to you, Michael.
Yes. This was really exciting. Honestly, this is
Yes.
our equity and action strategy. Mr. Loris Williams did an excellent job of helping to lead us through this process before she retired. And so we're thankful of this legacy that she left with us. And I'm thankful for each of you that graciously gave us your time to participate. Ramo was contracted after we went through a process last February of the board deciding that we were going to move forward with this. And we did an RFP. And after going through 15 different organizations, Ramo was selected. And then many of you were part of that process where they met with the trustees, they met with the community, they met with staff, and they begin to craft a strategy that will help us as we go forward. So in that, on page 2 of the attachment that you have, you can see in our equity action strategy that there were 7 areas that were identified. Yeah, so it's this one here, attachment. There's 7 key areas that were identified. Quickly, there was leadership, policy and governance, training, development, and advancement, staff, equitable service delivery, workplace service climate, and then reporting and accountability. And so out of those 7 areas, if you look at the packet, it tells you, explains what each one of those areas are, what the target is. We have key actions and we have success indicators. So an example would be on page 3, you look at leadership strategy, we break them down into modular format. You have 1.1, it tells you what it is, and then it gives you what the key actions are up under that. And then it tells you what the success indicators are. Pretty much what would it look like? So here's what we want to do, and then here's how we know it's successful. And I think that's the beauty of this document, is that the document isn't just some pie in the sky ideas. It's actually a strategy that we can implement, that we will later have timelines put in place for, which indicates which staff is partially responsible for making sure that comes to fruition. And we're just really excited about the process of where we are. So you have it in your possession. If you have questions, definitely here to answer it. And then page 52, we have a motion for approval.
I was involved with this quite in depth, and the staff and I say the team and everybody who went through this, so much thought. You know, it's almost like I could say we did 4 rounds of 360. It was amazing. I learned a lot in the process, and it's really an exciting document to see all put together. One of the things that you'll notice the letter B, and that was something we added, and it's belonging. The only reason for all of this is so that everybody feels like they belong, right? So we added the word belonging to our strategy for this. So they did a great job, and it was such a privilege and an honor. Do we have any questions or comments?
The process that we went through, and one of the things that I thought was most meaningful was how we tested ourselves through the process to say, objectives will be achieved when.
Yeah.
And you find that through the entire document here, is that in effect, we're holding ourselves accountable for saying, these are the things we want to do, and this is how we're actually going to know whether we've accomplished them. And that was kind of a theme and a process that went through as Rama kind of led us through this whole process. And I think what it does is it gives us the ability to really recognize and measure, are we doing the things we said we were going to do, and how are we going to know whether we did?
What would it look like?
They were very heavy on target, knew exactly, what their goals were, but they didn't short you anything. If you had questions, if you had concerns, if you wanted to elaborate on something, they did. It was very rewarding, and they were excellent.
I also think Roma did a great job of organizing this in a way that produced real results. They articulated our thoughts and held us to accountabilities and the outcomes. I think it's a great working document that we can use. And everybody did a great job participating.
And we're included in it, trustees. I just want you to know we didn't get off the hook. We're gonna have some work here, so. Okay, do I have any other questions, comments, input? Can I have a motion?
I move it.
Thank you. Thank you. Morgan?
Mr. Stengel,
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Knowles,
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza Locke,
Yes.
Ms. Howe, Ms. Harding,
Yes.
Reverend Gordon,
Yes.
Mr. Janai,
Yes.
Ms. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Bell,
Yes.
Ms. Banks,
Yes.
and Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That's wonderful. Well, Scott, we're gonna come talk to you about some infrastructure transformation.
Well, you're gonna talk to me briefly. Just kind of let me set the stage. We've been dealing with how do we develop our information technology and our infrastructure associated with that. It was part of our 17 plan. It was pulled into our interim strategic plan as pillar 3. We have not come back to talk with you in any robust fashion since the 2020 plan was presented, but work has been ongoing. The work has been driven by our Director of Information Technology and Operations, Steve Spinelli. He would be with us today, but he got called up. So he's Colonel in the Army Reserve, and he is on his way to wherever that is going to be for the next 30 days. So luckily, we have added to our board of trustees, Mr. Brian Janai, who specializes in these kind of conversations and evolutions and development. Brian has partnered with Steve since his inception on the board, which is now what, four months or so now?
Oh, has it been that long?
So they've been meeting regularly together with me originally and also with several vendors just to kind of scope the project. And today is kind of the first conversation about the scope, and I'm going to turn it over to Brian for the rest of the story. And then I'm going to turn it over.
I guess we start like this. If we can rewind this meeting to about 15 minutes ago when we were talking about our providers, the agencies we fund, performance, getting, data that can help us to make decisions. I think this is kind of what it's all about. Steve and Scott came to me. I've been on the board 4 months. They came to me 3 months ago. We had a nice lunch and we talked about Scott's vision of really making data-informed decisions for how we spend our money. Okay, making sure that there's true measurable outcomes that come with the money we spend. Because at the end of the day, all of us as trustees, we want to make sure that it's not wasted, right? It's going to help people, people that really need it. So I kind of, I agreed with them. I loved Scott's vision, and Steve and I started going on this quest of trying to determine what it would look like if, with all of our 30 providers out there and the 25,000 patients we help annually, right? How do we track what's happening? So we've gone on this quest of trying to figure out what would be needed from an infrastructure, an IT infrastructure standpoint, to track that data so that each and every meeting, we had real up-to-date real-time data. And, we've talked to many different vendors and we've kind of come to the determination that it's possible. Initially we thought, well, all of our 30 providers are going to have to get on the same patient management system. All right. And doing something like that is very expensive. It is horribly intrusive. And a lot of our providers, we're just a small portion of the population they serve. So if we went to them and said, hey, you're going to switch to Epic and, now we're going to track everything you do, they'd be like, get out of here. We don't need you. But we've through working with some individuals at ProMedica, we've determined that there is the ability to use what's called RPA digital worker bots. Okay, and what that means is we can deploy these digital workers to go out and scrape data from all the different patient management systems and all of our different provider institutions. So we can go out, we can program these bots to go out and say, hey, tell me, how many patients we have that are currently being seen in your institution. What's their gender? What's their age? What are they being seen for? And it all comes back to us in the form of a dashboard so that, it's updating every 5 minutes. We can see where patients are going. If they're going from Harvard to a homeless shelter, we kind of know what's happening. So this is very possible, and it's actually not overly expensive. But the other thing we determined is, so we can do this, and I think it would be helpful for us as a board of trustees to, be able to see how all of our providers are performing in real time, okay? That way we can, if we have to, we can go to them and say, hey, you need to deploy some changes in terms of your outreach. You're not reaching the people that need to be helped, or you're not providing better ways for them to access you, giving them more, kind of removing barriers so that they can come in and get the help they need. So we can do all that, and it's not going to be expensive. We haven't gone into getting RFPs or anything for what it's going to take to do something like that. I truly believe in it. But, in order to do that, we have to kind of get the Scott's IT infrastructure brought up to speed a little bit more. I mean, right now they're operating on very old systems. They're not operating on any cloud-based servers. So I think phase one would be to get the board, our own board, situated from an IT standpoint, to get everybody upgraded, get everybody on the same systems, get hardware that is up to date, cloud servers that store all this data. And then the next step would be, if the trustees all agree that, going out and being able to capture real-time data on our population that's being served is important enough, then we can go out and deploy the money to set those systems up. So with that, I'm not going to go too much deeper. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Cost, who would else have to get involved, and how would you build in security?
So everything would be HIPAA compliant. I mean, everything would be secure and fully operate under HIPAA guidelines. Yeah, so the security I have no issue with. We know that that's possible. It can be done. And then your second question was about funding or money?
Well, that and funding, cost.
Yeah.
How extensive it would be. And then secondly, who else would have to be involved in order for us? Who would we have to partner with to? Because we're sharing information, correct?
Yes.
So who else would be involved other than the health recovery services board?
Yeah, so the only other entity that would be involved is whoever we hire to program these digital bots.
And our contractors, where we get the information.
Yeah, and our contractors. So we would have to, let's just say it's a harbor. We would have to go to Harbor and say, hey, Harbor, we really want some real-time
So they
data.
have to update their system.
They don't have to update anything. That's the best part of this, is that they can keep doing everything the same way they've always done it. But we're programming these bots to go into their system and just take the information that's pertinent to
So
us.
They would uniquely attach to their system.
Yes. Yeah. So they would just go in, grab the information that's, pertinent to us, and it would bring it back to our dashboard. So now we've got real-time data, at every meeting. Yeah. Yes.
You have that at Mercy Hospital, and you have it at that system that you're talking about.
Well, you're talking about the EMR system? Yeah, so Prometic operates off of something called Epic, and all of their providers use Epic. Okay, the problem is all of our providers that we fund use different systems.
Oh, they all use the same.
No. There's probably, we haven't, one of our steps is to go into each provider and find out what system they're using. Some are using newer systems, some are using old archaic systems. But what we've determined is that no matter what system that is being used, we can still program these bots to go into it and scrape the data that we are interested in. Yeah.
I just can't imagine having that information on a monthly basis and how it'll empower us.
Every 5 minutes.
It's not even monthly, it's
Every
real time.
5
This
minutes.
is like,
It's real time. Yeah.
it's real time, and as we see needs shift and change and anything major going on in any one agency, we wouldn't have to wait for them to report it to us the buy-in.
Exactly, and we'd be able to, and rather than have a self-report come in, we'd be able to notice, hey, they're underperforming. And we'd be able to take a proactive approach at saying, you know, going in and
Exactly.
working with them and saying, all right, you're underperforming, what needs to be changed? You know, what can we change to bring, you know, start having you bring your programs up to speed and service the amount of patients we're paying you to serve.
Well, you know, as you were saying this, I thought to myself, you know, we're being held accountable by the public. And now we'll be in a position where we currently have accountability with our contractors and things, but it would be just on a whole new level of being able to, this is just amazing. I've never heard of bots before.
And Scott wants to go so far as to, hey, I mean, we're all about transparency. So, you know, we can have on our website live data. Our taxpayers at any point in time can come and see, this is the amount of patients we've served as of 5 minutes ago.
Does our current agency contract permit us to have this kind of level of access?
Is that video call? Of course.
We would need to massage some of the language. Obviously, we don't know what we want yet. You know, there are definite benefits to the agencies that participate as well. We are legally entitled to that information. I mean, if we're the payer source, if anybody that touches our money, we certainly can do that. But we also need to remember that there is a whole heck of a lot of infrastructure behind just programming those bots that will transform the way we do business internally as well. How we monitor contracts, how we manage internal communications, billing, ticklers for reporting, all kinds of different things that we struggle with on a day-to-day basis on the way we internally do our business that could just revolutionize the way we communicate with each other and with the public and with our providers.
Right, and right now we're outsourcing that.
Right. Right now, we can't really trace somebody from homelessness to a house to treatment to an emergency shelter to a hospital, into a support service. The vision is that we connect all of that together in this system so that we can watch
the continuity of
how
care.
people move.
Continuity of care.
And then we can realize what else we may need to do as a board so that when we have a opportunity to address alcohol use disorders in our community, we have the dashboard that says, hey, we need to do this in order to impact our outcomes as a system. And to me, that's kind of the exciting part about this. And it's something that this board has had a vision for 6-7 years, right? And just to kind of temper it, when Trustee Janai, I'm teasing you, says it's not going to be that expensive, he means low 7 figures.
Yeah.
Okay? He doesn't mean 50 grand.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, it is going to be in the 7 figures, but it's not going to be.
Yeah.
It's not going to be. But it's not going to be.
I'm going to wait till we get that bill.
Putting everybody on one system, you know, making everybody go to Epic or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of conversation that needs to occur between us and the systems and our community partners, contractors, regarding what this can do to help ease their administrative burden as well.
Yeah.
Which is something that we've asked for a long time.
We'll be able to
We have
track
to look at the
outside.
costs and.
We won't be able to track outside. Like, if they were not contracted with them, though, we won't be able to get that information. So if we had somebody that goes from an organization that got treatment and they went to a hospital that we don't contract with, we won't be able to get that information, right?
We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. We're working.
Because that would be ideal.
We're working with ProMedica and to see if that could be a possibility as well. So that's in the works.
The coordination of benefits conversation, all within HIPAA regulations. We're working at the state level to modernize the way Medicaid reports data, not just behavioral health data, but physical health data and prescriptions for like bodies, hospital admissions. There's boards out there that are doing something, I won't say close to this, but doing some good work in this area. But there isn't any board that is doing stuff like we're talking about.
No,
So we'd be leading the nation.
we would be
I don't know about the
a
nation,
national,
but I know in
a
Ohio. we
national
would be.
case study, yeah.
I think, you know, we should come together, but what I said is that, this is something we've asked for many, many years, and we've strived for. I think you're really, really happy, data. And, but, you know, and we are looking at the cost, but it's something that we have had on our agenda for years.
Right. And it's going to be a gradual process. You know, we're not going to be able to just flip a switch and say, oh, we got it. You know, you might have multi-year investments. There's going to be long-term carrying costs to this. There's going to have to be, you know, an investment in ongoing infrastructure here at the board as well. So it is not a one and done, set it and forget it kind of conversation.
You made it sound too easy, didn't I?
Oh, no, I like that.
It's going to be phased, but it's definitely doable, and it's doable within all of our lifetimes. I mean, it can be done very much so. I mean, when we were talking to one of our implementing companies that will, you know, provide us or will respond to our RFP, they believe that the board infrastructure, so our internal IT infrastructure, can be upgraded and ready to go, and we can have our first bots deployed by the end of 2022. I mean, so
That's
it's not,
exciting.
yeah.
That's exciting. And just being able to upgrade the infrastructure within our own board is really important.
It's really important.
I mean, we have to have state of the art. I mean, too many, 25,000 lives depend on us.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, we sit here and talk about, we're going into a renewal levy effort, and saying all of us realize the level of demand that's there for the services that we fund and are provided in this community through what we do. All of us also know that in order for us to be able to go back to taxpayers and talk about future investment, we have to be able to demonstrate and where it is and why, which means we have to have better infrastructure and better data and better information to be able to do that. We see it every day around us. Anyone who thinks the Amazons of the world don't have infrastructure and can't figure out what somebody needs tomorrow, or that a Costco store can't figure out what's selling so hot that they have it literally on the floor the next day, that's because they have infrastructure and the ability to use data to be able to make quick decisions. Our ability to provide the level of service that we need in this community that we would expect and want to have here, and we've said this for a long time. We said this when we made as we're making the transition in what we're doing in crisis services. We'd really like others to come to Toledo and to come to Lucas County 2-3 years from now and say, I want to do what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I think from a data perspective and how that helps us make better decisions, how it helps our agencies be better, and how it ultimately helps people who need it. We'd like people to be able to come to us a few years down the road and say, we want to do it like they're doing. So I'm so encouraged, because you're right, Scott, we've been talking about this for how long? And to really have something now in front of us that says, these are the things that we can do and get benchmarks moving forward.
Yeah.
I think I would want to add also that, you know, there's cool things happening in the agencies that we fund every single day that we never even know about. This would be a way for us to easily get that data into, so that we can push it back out for folks to understand just how hardworking they are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let me think how I can phrase this so I don't sound like I'm trying to rain on a parade, because I think this is all fantastic and I understand and appreciate what it does for us.
But I'm wondering, how do we counterbalance the stigma associated with mental health care and treatment, and with our patients, our clients, our customers, whatever we want to call them, in terms of how closely, and I know we're complying with HIPAA, but how closely we're monitoring and tracking and gathering data so that they don't feel, because I can tell you, when I get an email from, in my other folder about a product that I happen to be talking about to somebody in close proximity to my iPhone, it creeps me out. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just, there's that whole other thing over here, and I just think we need to be thinking about how we're going to
Secure it
to
and
secure
protect
it
privacy
and not
and-
have any unintended fears or consequences about what really is a good, positive thing. Because it just has that, as I'm sitting here, has that little bit of,
Big brotherish.
yeah, that
Okay,
little
so
bit of creepiness
I
to
agree.
it.
I understand exactly what you're saying, but we need to set the record straight. We are HIPAA compliant now. We will remain HIPAA compliant.
Oh, yeah, no, I get
And
that.
we have federal laws and local, state, and regulations that we
Yeah.
need to follow in order to secure data.
Right, I get all that.
Also,
I'm
this
just
should
saying we
be
got it.
entirely transparent in what we're doing and what we intend to do with the data.
I
In
get all
fact,
that.
that's part of our HIPAA compliance requirements. Secondly, it should be invisible to the clients.
Yeah,
While
but
they should know, there
Yeah.
shouldn't be extra steps that they need to do in order to get this information. It should build upon the information that's already being collected and that we are legally entitled to.
yeah, no, I get all that. I'm just saying, because I think, as you said, we're gonna disclose it. I just think we need to be to the clients. I mean, they, you gotta,
You have to tell them the purposes for the use
Yeah,
of the information and
yeah.
how you're gonna use it, yes, and that's
so,
part of our disclosure.
just
We
to
said-
think about it.
I agree
But
with
it-
what Newman is saying, but I think it's something we cannot not do. I think it's
Oh,
something we have to
yeah.
pursue,
But it-
but you have to
Yeah.
be very vigilant because it does have a big weather feel to it.
But
And that
we're
was
not
when I asked
supposed
that question, what are you gonna do to secure it? So if it's HIPAA compliant, then that goes a long ways. But let's face it, this is the world that we live in. And in
Yeah.
order to function now, we have to have the availability of that kind of technology to move forward and to be
Yeah.
responsive as quickly as you need to be to address issues as they develop. So you have to do it, but yet you have to be vigilant in protecting the data. Because we have a responsibility to our clients, the people that we serve, to do that, because it's their privacy that we're talking about.
But we're not giving any information regarding that treatment. So what's
Well,
happening?
individualized information
Right,
will never
individual.
be
You're not doing
public.
that.
I get all that.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
do.
saying we should just give it some thought, because we're dealing with people who are
From our
feeling
perspective,
stigmatized already.
In the healthcare, again, Jim's can probably validate this as well, is already being used in the healthcare system, the medical
Yep.
system, it's already being used.
I get all that, but
We're
I'm
just
not
behind
the
it.
person you're
I
trying
get
to,
it.
you're trying to
I get
sell
it.
on.
Yeah.
It's somebody who's trying to, keep it away from their employer, or
I get
who's, feeling like their family, so
Safeguard.
I'm just
We gotta
saying,
have
let's,
safeguard.
let's just give that some thought too,
Good
somewhere along the
points
line.
are well taken.
Another thing I think we ought to at least be aware of, I support this, I think it's a great project, but I own several scars from levy campaigns where people thought that the schools were spending too much money on cutting edge, whiz bang, new stuff. And it's sort of the flip side of what Jim was saying, is that I think we need to have a strategy, we need to have talking points around the levy campaign, make it clear that this isn't $1 million or $2 million that's just being spent because we want to be cutting edge and we want to be out front of everybody. This is how it's going to be deployed. This is how we really need it, why we need it, and how we're going to use it. Because a lot of folks will look at something and say, well, you don't need that. That's too much money. It's too fancy, and it's going to come up.
Yeah, I think that we definitely need an investment strategy, but also for too long, we're in the position where we're in because we've not invested in ourselves.
You're preaching to the choir.
Right.
I'm just saying that we need to have the people who are running our levy be aware of this and have some talking points.
Well, any other comments or questions for Brian?
Well, I just comment on what Ms. Harding said and Ms. Rodriguez a little bit back. With what I do every day, working in the managed care system, what I've seen is they're not going people. The missing people are going to the hospital. That's like they're going to the hospital. They're going to the ER. That's from the data that I get. They're going to the ER, and so being able to understand why they're going there instead of going back to an agency or going to the support system where they have a support system. They're utilizing the ER as that, okay, you got me stable right now. Let me think about my next steps. So I think that if we understood why they were going there instead of, going there, and I think that would be a good way of starting the conversation piece with individuals, per the people that are serving them, starting a good conversation piece with them concerning their options. It's like with treatment says recovery, although it does provide recovery tools. Treatment provides interventions. Recovery provides support. The support of interventions that recovery provides is not directed focus. It is subjective focus. So we're basically looking at what a person is wanting to get. He's making the suggestion of what he wants or what he needs, and the support person is helping that. So I think with a system like this, the next piece of that will be the conversation that a support person would have in essence about the services that that individual has. I mean, I'm just going off here because I know that what I've seen, the support in here, and I know from talking with individuals that work in treatment, if I knew what happened, and this is something that was said, oh, well, we see this person went here and here, but in between these two places, something happened. So now we have a designated area where we can get kind of contact, get kind of hone in on what's going on. I think that's kind of like another piece of the system that would have to be considered, that support part of that system where who we have in place to help with that.
That's an excellent.
Yeah. Well, if I could offer just a different perspective, I understand exactly what she's saying. I think Amazon reads my mind every day. It's probably because I spend so much money. However, the other side of that is that I think that there will be people who will welcome it, because when you are in crisis and you're walking through the hard parts, and we're boots on the ground, I mean, that's my world, is they get frustrated with the system and navigating the system.
Yeah.
So this continuity of care will help them to be able to navigate a little better and help us to understand them better and show them, hand them off, show them, walk them to the next space, because we'll know more and we'll have more right now on time information. And so although it might be frustrating to some, and I get, it will also be welcomed by many that are walking through the hardest parts of their world and the hardest parts of their life.
And the easy fix is to go to ER.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we haven't. That's the poverty mentality, and ER is the doctor, and you just go to the ER. When we deal with clients like that every day, and then it's hard to track. So, but if we're able to, have information with ProMedica and get into those systems, that would be phenomenal to be able to track that, because it's an ER mentality.
We can also identify, this would also help us to identify voids that may exist. Absolutely. That, programs could be employed in certain areas to,
So looking at what social determinants of health.
It could, absolutely. That's where ProMedica, they think ProMedica may have a very big interest in something
Yeah.
like this.
Well, what's exciting about it is it allows us to put out RFPs on voids we're seeing right away. Like, I mean, if all of a sudden we're seeing an uptick in something, we can go, oh my goodness, we need to address this in our community. And that's, again, just really exciting. Thank you. Thank you for all the time, the sharing of your talent on this. Your efforts will change our community. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, any other questions for Brian? Okay, Scott.
Okay, we're gonna run through some of these things. I think everybody's feeling the heat here a little bit too. Big buildings are hard to balance when you have these temperature changes, and this building is no exception to that rule. So you all know health officer designations. We're looking at page 19. There's a motion on the middle of page 19 for 1 new health officer and 2 renewals. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
That the only thing again is that, and I'm really happy, more than willing to support these people, but I'd like to know where they fall into the category of race.
We've decided that we're presenting that information on a quarterly basis, I believe.
Okay.
I don't think we're doing it every time because it just simply doesn't change all that much over time.
All right,
I think we did it last month.
thank you.
Great. Can we have a motion?
Someone.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Stengel?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Knowles? Ms. Mendoza-Lot?
Yes.
Ms. Harding?
Yes.
Reverend Gordon?
No.
Mr. Janai?
No, it's-
Ms. Carter?
I need these.
Mr. Brown?
We can't vote on these.
Ms. Bell?
Yes.
Ms.
So we'll
Banks?
force you to do it.
And Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next topic, and I'm sure you are exhausted, and let me just tell you, I am really exhausted at looking at policies. We have 16 policies left. These are the first 8, and then the remaining 8 are within personnel. So we'll do our best to try and get as many of those we can for the executive nominating committee next week. But again, like I said, I'm really exhausted with policies. Staff have done a tremendous job of making suggestions and recommendations. And what I bring to you today is a cleanup of 4 different sections, starting with the relationship with contract agencies. You may recall 2 months ago, we presented this policy for deletion. It was stated at that point that elements of that policy appeared in other policies. So when we went back and we actually tried to identify those policies, we could find references, but not specific to what the relationship with contract agencies policy described. So instead of going back and changing 4 or 5 different policies, I just updated this relationship with contract agencies, withdrawing my recommendation for deletion, and then making some regular or making some changes to the policy itself. Do you want me to keep moving? Okay.
Yeah.
Emergency crisis intervention services. This is the last of the programs and services policies. It was updated language and to align with our desired service array as well, and clarifying eligibility. The second policy, or the third policy, was internet use. There was no substantial changes to that. But the fourth policy is actually a new policy. Social media. It is an entirely new policy. And it was felt that we needed to establish some guardrails for expectations both within this organization and our staff as they interact on social media. As you know, we are public officials. We represent our board, and everything we say and do comes under public scrutiny and can impact our ability to not only maintain positive relationships with our organizations, our contract organization, our peers, but also the community and the taxpayers. So just identifying expectations. Hey, this is what's going on. This is where we expect and how things will be addressed should things go bad. And we've had some examples of when things went bad externally that made us realize that having a policy internally would be of high value. Workplace safety. We clarified who the workplace safety officer was, identified the location for the panic buttons, and I just want to make mention that since this policy was sent out to you all, we had a suggestion internally from our staff to consider workplace safety as it relates to working physically here, but also how does this policy impact remote locations? So that can be addressed within the procedure, which I am able to, by policy, I can change, but I'm going to need to take this back to not only prosecutor's office, but county risk management for some additional input. So you are free to approve this policy, it is, but understanding that some of the procedure language may change. Board expenditure approval, we added language to include unanticipated expenditures as allowed by for emergencies with some new revised code language, and it aligns with our other policy that we have. And I'm drawing a blank on the policy that allows us to do that, but we wanted to make sure that our fiscal policies are aligned. Now, if you're paying attention, which I know all of you are, this was the only fiscal policy that you reviewed since we've started this. That's because in 2020, we reviewed a bunch of fiscal policies. So we will start that rotation of reviewing our fiscal policies once every 3 years, which will begin next year. So those will be the first group of policies that you'll see when we move forward. Finally, continuous quality improvement agencies and continuous quality improvement board. We simply clarified the applicability of the policies and updated the language and modified reporting and trustee plan approval as identified. So with that, there are 8 policies for your approval. There's a motion on the bottom of page 20 for your consideration.
Motion. Question, please. Got on the social.
Can we get a second first? So I get a. Okay, there we go.
On the social media, that has a prosecutor's office already.
Yes.
Because this is a very hot issue, as you know. Yeah. Right. Civil rights issue. I mean,
right.
Okay, great.
Right.
And thank you for making that adjustment on that.
Absolutely.
I think to do that when I post, because sometimes I look at it and I go like, what did I just send? Because I didn't think it through. So when I looked at your policy, I thought, those words are really, really beneficial. So it's something that.
Yeah, putting some guardrails up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a policy on remote work using non-board equipment?
I will have to research that and get back to you. So I want to say yes, we do.
It's an important,
Yeah.
I would guess you do. I don't remember seeing it. But.
I think it's tied in, well, I don't want to guess, but I'm pretty sure we do, but I'll bring that out.
Yeah, there's security issues.
Right, and county risk management has, which we fall under, has created this robust discussion around cyber insurance, which a lot of those conversations came up about, okay, who can do what and where and how and all that.
So I have a question. Just so that I'm clear, the social media policy applies, this says board staff, so is not applicable to board trustees?
I cannot, I think you guys get to decide how you handle,
Well, I mean, as it's written.
right, well, again, there are certain codes of conduct that, per policy, I think internally board staff are held to, where, there are other ethical considerations that you will have to struggle with externally. I don't know if we can really put a policy in place for board trustees and what they interact outside of your responsibilities.
Okay, and this would apply to any staff member's personal Facebook page
Yep.
and posting?
Sure.
Okay, all right. My next question is, and you haven't gotten through everything yet, right?
There is a motion and a second. We are doing
Okay.
questions.
So my question is on the workplace safety, under procedure number 1, we have a specific employee name.
Yes.
Is there, because safety officer is in some of the other policies and there's not a specific individual name, is it, why are we tying it
Well, because
rather than to whoever holds that position?
because this is the policy where it's defined as we will have a safety officer.
Okay,
And so we wanted to make sure everybody knew who that safety officer was. And full transparency, I had to go to Robert and say, "You're the safety officer, right?"
okay,
And he goes, "Yes, I'm the safety officer."
okay, so
Yeah.
okay, all right, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Morgan?
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Ms. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. Janai,
Yes.
Reverend Gordon,
Yes.
Ms. Harding,
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza-Locke,
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Knowles,
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Mr. Stingle.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. And right back to you, Scott.
Certainly, this is the last item on the agenda other than open session. You are well aware that in December, we voted, you trustees voted to withhold funds of any organization that did not present a independent audit to this board in a timely fashion. And then you also provided me discretion that if someone provided an excuse that was reasonable in a reasonable time frame, that we could release those funds. So this process is the reason for this 120-day notice is connected to that process. Through our conversations with Adelante, we have identified that their auditor has serious concerns related to internal controls and potential improprieties involving employees that have impacted the auditor's ability to do their audit. As such, we feel, board staff, myself included, feel that we need to preserve our ability to make changes should changes be required into the future contract year. As such, I'm recommending approval of the 120-day notice so that we can preserve our discretion that if and when we see the audit and corrective actions do not meet this board's satisfaction, that you have the discretion to decide if you want to contract with them or not. We have met once with Adelante trustees, two of their trustees and the interim CEO. We have had several conversations with their, we've had 2 conversations, I don't want to overstate, with their independent auditors. And we are very comfortable, given the position that we're in right now, and not having that audit in hand, that we come back to you with an unusual move of issuing a second 120-day notice. If this notice is not approved today and given to Adelante before the end of day tomorrow, then your discretion to enter into a fiscal year 23 contract with them will be greatly, or to decide if you want to enter into a contract with them, will be greatly diminished. You will lose a lot of your discretion. It's why we changed this from a planning and oversight committee meeting to a special board meeting. I will stop there. I'm trying to be fair and impartial in the conversation, and not present any misleading information, because we have yet to receive the audit, the findings, and the material weaknesses. So there's just enough here from our position, and I believe our Director of Finance supports this recommendation, that we issue Adelante a 120-day notice. And it's also important to understand that this starts discussion. It doesn't mean in the end that you will decide to uphold this. It'll keep your discretion alive while we continue to have discussion about what exactly is going on.
Are you looking for a motion?
We will need a motion on, and that motion is on the bottom of page 33.
So moved.
Are these the only two programs we fund for them?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Do you know who the auditor is?
GBQ.
Any other?
With the date, notice of effective date with February 17th, March 2nd.
No.
Where do you see
I'm just saying, what is going to be the effective date?
the effective date is today.
Today.
Yeah, because we are 120, as of tomorrow, we will be 120 days from the end of the fiscal year. So we're still within our time frame.
So it's noted on here, today is, what is today?
Today's the first.
First, yeah, okay, but the correspondence says the second, so it'd be effective.
Tomorrow, right.
Okay.
Any other questions, concerns?
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Ms. Banks?
Yes.
Ms. Bell?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Janai?
Yes.
Reverend Gordon?
Yes.
Ms. Harding?
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza Locke?
Yes.
Mr. Knowles?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
And Mr. Stengel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. Before we go into open session, I just want to ask everyone to participate in the support of the levy campaign. It's really important as we go out into the community that we have 100% board participation. And, you know, if 50 cents, $5, heck, I'll even take a quarter, whatever it takes for us to have 100% participation. It's really not about the amount. It's truly about being able to say that we as trustees support our own levy. And now we can go into open session.
Before you move, here's the question. Do we give checks to Scott, to you? How do we?
Oh, Jen?
To Jenny. Okay.
Jenny?
You can give them to Jenny, or you can actually drop them off at the front desk. Susan can code them into our receipt book and forward them to Jenny. We'll store them in our
Is
safe.
there a way to do that online? Or does it have to be?
Credit card, debit.
We do not have the electronic process.
What?
No, but we're working on it. So hang in there, Eva. We're working on it.
It's completely separate.
Is it for it's for the levy committee then?
Yes,
This is
citizens.
Citizens for mental health.
Yes.
Yes,
Were
citizens for
there
mental health.
instructions sent out by email in terms of who to
Yes,
write a check to?
There was.
By Morgan?
No, I sent it out, I believe.
You sent it out. I'll
Thursday.
go back. All right, that's fine.
I can resend it if that would be
Nope,
helpful.
nope, I'll find it.
Yeah. Some of us forgot.
Yeah.
You still have time.
I,
There's no
I'll admit I
expiration date.
forgot.
So
Totally.
we can do, when are you looking for?
No. What's our deadline?
When you can get to it.
Yeah, but I mean, when do you want to be able to make the representation that there's 100% participation?
As soon as possible.
Yeah, because it helps us with the next presentation. But I guess if we need to adhere to it, if a deadline helps everybody, April 1st. Do it before April Fool's.
Done. Okay.
Let's revise them just a touch.
Okay.
March 28th.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, March 28th.
Yes. Good catch, Scott.
Yeah.
Good catch, March 28th.
March 28th,
I like that.
it's our proposed kickoff, all things pending. It's been an interesting few weeks here with preparing for the Levy campaign. Yes, Richard, please start us off.
Just a brief update on what's going on at Government Center. The J&H Caring Hearts will be placing a 4-unit facility for a residential facility for people with mental illness at 353 Parker. That's on the east side. It's near the intersection of Star and East Bancroft, or East Broadway. And they were approved last month by the Plan Commission. On the 16th of this month, they'll go before the Zoning and Planning Committee of City Council and anticipate that will be approved. And Lutheran Social Services, which is a former contract agency, they purchased the land to the south of their facility over at Bancroft and Collingwood. They're going to put in a new parking lot and expand their facility. They do a lot of mental health and substance abuse counseling. They have been reviewed and approved by the Old West End Association. They will be going before the Plan Commission for their special use permit on the 10th, which I believe is a week from Thursday. And I attended the county commissioners this morning and saw something I've never seen before. March is Developmental Disabilities Month, and they always have a presentation of county commissioners. What was different this time around is the only people that spoke were people with developmental disabilities. There were 3 of them. They talked about their struggles making in the community and how the service they received helped them. And after the meeting, I was curious, and I asked Tina Skelton-Wozniak, did the county commissioners requested only this year? I said, no, that was the Developmental Disabilities Board, and they wanted them to speak for themselves. Even though there were plenty of people there that worked at the board and in the contract agency, they wanted the people to speak for themselves. That's the first time I've seen that. And this board does share a lot of dual diagnosis clients with that board. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. Anyone else? Okay. Let's go home to me.
Thanks, everybody. David.
Thanks, Scott.
Seconds. Brian, nice job.
I know, right?
Nope, my wife's birthday.